What's up everyone? Welcome back to another video on the channel. We've been playing Diablo a lot, and I noticed at the end of our last stream there was quite a lot of searching, I guess, for the build because of what the title was, and no one's going to look through a stream to try and find what the build is. So we're going to do a video here for you. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to go core concept of what the build is. We'll take you through the skill tree. We'll briefly touch on the Paragon boards, and then kind of the pros and cons of it. And hopefully it should not be that long. You can test it out, see what you think. Alright, let's go. Essentially an artillery build. Playing support primarily, it works incredibly well with the second player. In this case, it's been Val running the Blightmaster Necromancer. Corpse Tendrils, grab, pull, works amazingly. Your focus is running your imbuements. That's where most of your damage is coming from. So if you're poisoning your shadow imbuements, and you're essentially just rotating between the two, ideally, not that it matters too much, you're using the shadow imbuement for ads, and you're using the poison imbuement for the elite and bosses. It does more damage with the build to an individual target. Works well with groups, so you can rotate between the two as you move through a dungeon or whatever, but running the shadow imbuement against bosses and elites doesn't do quite as much damage. It's not quite as effective, but it is still pretty good. I will say, it is still pretty good. You're going to be using rapid fire. That's your main thing. That's where all your damage is coming from. I like Forceful Arrow. Forceful Arrow is very good as a control thing for the rogue. When you're running a bow, if they get close enough, you push them back. So it puts distance between you, which as an archer is kind of an important thing. But what also really works well is if you push them into another target, they fall over. And then yes, rapid fire is your main damage dealer because you're going with a combo point build. So you're going 1, 2, 3 with Forceful Arrow, which is then making them vulnerable, which is then giving you the full volley on your rapid fire. You're running Caltrops. This took a little bit of finagling. You run up, you drop the poison trap. Good if you know they're coming. If it's an ambush, you need to be able to just get out of there. And then they will chill them. Again, crowd controls your enemy, let you fire, and do a decent amount of damage. Concussive, because you're knocking back and knocking down enemies, you'll get increased critical strike chance against them. And weapon mastery, because I have a personal preference to using bows, so increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Again, every enemy you fight is going to be vulnerable. It's worth taking a point into Dark Shroud because of some gear stuff that you'll get. You don't use it as an active power, but you will get Dark Shrouds. So it's worth taking points in that to improve what you get. Increased damage to healthy enemies, which will let you get to Malice, which is increased damage to vulnerable again. And then, of course, here we are with the imbuements. These are your main damage aspects. These are the main things you're working with. So, precision imbuement, you gain increased critical strike chance with imbued skills. Of course, the poison one, which will do a decent amount of damage, basically. But increase the duration, and critical strikes increases the poison damage further, which your critical strike chance is already going to be quite good. And then with the shadow imbuement, they'll explode other things. Increased poison damage, and then poison enemies deal less damage, which is why it works really well. Apart from the damage output, you're talking those elites and those bosses are now going to do less damage to you. Increases your survivability, because the caltrops are freezing things and chilling things, and I guess things like Penitent Greaves, whatnot, you could run them. Having increased damage to chilled enemies and frozen enemies is also quite nice. Yeah, we took innovation, and we've got Shadow Clone is the next one that we're using. So Shadow Clone, you become unstoppable, and you deal an additional 20% damage, your Shadow Clone. And then we took Precision. So when you cast a Marksman skill, which is almost entirely what we're doing, you gain a stack of Precision. You gain an additional stack if the skill critically strikes, which with Rapid Fire is a really good chance it's going to happen. And then when you reach 4 stacks, your next Marksman, Ultimate, or Core skill is a guaranteed critical strike and does increased damage. This is where the fun part comes in. It's because after that, you've then got your gear. There's a few things that you've got with the new season, which I'm actually having a lot of fun with when we've been checking it out on stream. The tempering things lets you build kind of some interesting stuff. So we've got this one. Critical strikes with marksman skills have a 49% chance to grant a free Dark Shroud. And then you combine that with volatile shadows. So when a Dark Shroud is removed from you, that's just when you take damage, it triggers an explosion that deals 3,729 shadow damage. That number varies depending on how good your actual imprint is, but it applies the shadow imbuement to each enemy. So now you've already got enemies that are kind of shadow imbued, which if you then do damage, they'll then explode. Which you can temper them to do increase in imbuement damage. So here's more imbuement damage. This is a fun one. So the 29% chance for rapid fire projectiles to cast twice. We're doing a lot of damage with that. Instead of 8 arrows, there's a chance that it'll be 16. Combine that with Grasp of Shadow. That's one of the uniques that we run. For the build overall, because Death Trap and Shadow Clone, you can switch those out. You don't actually need them. I run Shadow Clone because hitting a vulnerable enemy, again, vulnerable is a thing that you're going to be doing, with a marksman or cutthroat skill has a 24% chance to summon a Shadow Clone that mimics our attacks. I've got a 29% chance, and instead of firing 8 arrows, I fire 16. Plus, I've also got a chance to summon a Shadow Clone that will do the exact same thing. That's now 32 arrows that are coming out of me. Plus, there's the active Shadow Clone I can actually summon. So you can have myself, my Shadow Clone, and then the other random Shadow Clone that gets spawned. All of which will mimic my actions and will fire the same number of arrows. But wait, there's more. Imitated Imbuement is one of the hugely important ones if you run Shadow Clone. The actual casting the imbuement skill to grant increased damage for 9 seconds, it's helpful, but you don't need it. The important part from that is that your Shadow Clones also mimic the imbuments on your skills. So if I am firing 8 to 16 arrows that have poison or shadow imbuement, and then I've got my 24% chance to summon a Shadow Clone that will then fire the same thing, plus I'll then have my active Shadow Clone that will all mimic my poison arrows. You see where this is going. And then on the lucky hit with the daggers, again, we've got imbued damage on both daggers. We tried to roll them for the rapid fire and it didn't work in this case. But again, you're going for that as your main attack. So shadow imbued skills have a 75% chance to release an explosion that deals cold damage, chilling them, and potentially freezing them. And then we have stuff that does more damage than chilled and frozen stuff. And then when you cast an imbuement, you'll burst with the damage around you. And then just the stuff to top it off in terms of your uniques. There's 2 of them. 2 of them that are really good, and they're both rings. So you've got that guy's Corroded Signet. It's on the lucky hit that your damage over time effects, which would be poison, have up to a 50% chance to erupt, dealing 36,000 damage of the same type to surrounding enemies. Hence the reason that the poison works better on the elites and your bosses. You're basically hitting the thing that can sponge the hit and will then explode around, doing a lot of kind of poison damage and whatnot. And 36,000 points of poison damage is really quite strong, which will then tick over poisoning enemies as well, I think. And then this is where the main, this is probably the single most important unique that we found so far, which I think is new from this season, which is Scoundrel's Kiss. It gives you an extra couple points to rapid fire, so that's more damage per arrow, critical strike, things like that. But your rapid fire now lobs exploding arrows that deal increased damage. Looking at the Paragon boards, the first one we went for was Ranger. For every dexterity, increased marksman skill damage, which is our core and our main. You want the Eldritch Bounty legendary node. So when you attack with an imbued skill, you gain maximum resistance and 20% increased damage for that imbuement's element for 9 seconds. Which we then glyphed up with Infusion, which increases the damage that your imbued skills do, which then got us into No Witnesses. Your ultimate skills gain an additional 10% damage from your damage with ultimate bonus, and grant this bonus to all skills for 8 seconds when cast. Current bonus is 0. Maybe that's not working. Tracker, so that's you deal increased damage to poison targets. So that first volley onto a boss, which then is going to result in your damage increase on the second volley with the poison. But they're already poisoned, so that's then going to do more damage. Like, you're getting a general idea of what this build is going to be doing. There are kind of pros and cons with this build. It's burst damage, it's add clear all of that stuff. It worked especially well in dungeons. So you've got a lot of narrow corridors, things like that, to be able to fight. But they're kind of coming from one direction, so you can deal with them. In things like the Helltide, it was a little bit iffier. You were a lot more vulnerable to being attacked from multiple directions, which made it harder to then cover. In a dungeon, it's great. Out in the open, it does have its limitations. It's a great leveling and mid-game build. End-game stuff, we are still working on. It has the damage, but it's lacking survivability a bit more. We have been one-tapped a few times, but we also were able to two-tap the Butcher. So, it's hard to know really where it's going to stand. Val's Corpse Tendril and stuff like that, it combines incredibly well with that. Because obviously, that goes out, it grabs everything in area and pulls them into a very, very small location for me to then fire the Shadow Imbuement, which just explodes everything. Your suppressors, huge problem. And also the Chilling Wind elites are actually an interesting enemy to fight. Hadn't realised that at the time that we put the ring on. So when you fire the arrows through the Chilling Wind, it slows them down. When you're doing the lob, once you've got that ring on, when it hits the wind, it takes all the momentum of the arrows and they just fall down. So you can't shoot through the Chilling Wind with that ring on. So it does have its limitations. But its damage output is tremendous. Absolutely tremendous if you want to give it a go. But if you try it, leave a note in the comments. Let me know how you found it, how you improved on it, because we're still playing. We're actually quite enjoying this season, so we're still playing, and I'm still working on improving this build. This is just what we have at the moment. And we've never actually gone past level 88. Our very first rogue at the start, when on release, got to level 88. We've never done end game content. This is all new to us. So if the build has room for improvement and you improve on it, you let me know so that I can try it. Until then, thank you very much for watching the video. Feel free to join us in the streams both on Twitch and YouTube, and we'll catch you back very, very soon. Bye.